Hello, and welcome to episode number 49 of the Creative Mojo podcast. My name is Joanne, and I am the host, and I am coming to you, as I always do, from my home in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Today is, now I have to remember the date. It's the 13th, I believe, of May. It's a Saturday afternoon that I'm recording this. It's finally spring here. Yay. Very excited about that. It's actually been nice weather, although we did have a couple of days of sort of colder, rainier weather, but that's greened everything up and it's excellent. Anyway, enough about the weather. This is my podcast that's all about my love of knitting and what I'm working on these days. And if you're a new viewer, welcome, and I hope that you'll enjoy what you see and consider subscribing to the channel and checking out some other episodes. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It's good to see you again. It's been, as is sort of my usual schedule these days, about 3 weeks since my last episode. I did actually try to record last weekend, but then I felt like I didn't have enough time, is what it was, really. I didn't have enough time in the day, and I thought I would be kind of rushed, and so I decided to put it off and do it this weekend instead, which, as I said, has sort of become my norm about every 3 weeks. So anyway, I'm going to dive right into today because I have quite a few things to show you. And the first thing I actually want to talk about before I get into showing you what I've been working on the last couple of weeks is to talk about the CAL that we have, the year-long CAL. Sorry, it always happens to me when I start to record. It's probably psychosomatic. I feel like I get fiber up my nose and my nose gets itchy. It's probably in my head. Anyway, we have a pattern socks CAL running, year-long pattern socks CAL running in the Creative Mojo Ravelry group. And it's for anyone you just have to be a member of the group, and you can enter all year long. You can enter any pair of pattern socks that you knit. So that's socks that include, self-striping doesn't count, but that's socks that include texture, lace, cables, anything that creates pattern that anything that is pattern that you're creating through the knitting makes the socks eligible for the CAL. As I said, it's a year-long CAL, and it's one finished object thread for the whole year, so you can enter any socks that were started after January 1st, 2018 and are finished before December 31st, 2018, as many pairs as you want. Every 2 months, I'm doing a draw for a winner from that thread, and everything is eligible except if you've actually already won a prize, like the person who won the first prize at the end of February. That particular post is not eligible for another prize, but if she has knit other socks and put them in the CAL, those other posts are all eligible. So we have about 60, I think we have 68 projects in the CAL at this point, which is great. There's some, you should check it out. There's some really great inspiration, beautiful pattern socks in all kinds of different techniques. Like I said, cables, lace, some, I think, sort of mosaic knitting, and all kinds of fun stuff. So do check that out. And the second prize round was the end of April. And so I did a draw for that, I think on the 1st of May. And that was post number 48, which is, her username is Dr. Pepper00, and that's Elaine. So congratulations, Elaine. You have won the prize, the second round prize. She had a beautiful pair of slip stripe spiral socks. And Elaine, you have won this beautiful yarn from Bluebird Yarn, which is, she's a Canadian dyer on Etsy. I believe if you just search Bluebird Yarn on Etsy, you will find her shop if you're interested. Excuse me, I've ordered a couple of skeins for my stash from her as well. And your prize is this beautiful 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon in the color The Long Winter. This is from her Little House on the Prairies series, and kind of fun since we just finally got through, for most people, through our long winter. And I've included a little mini skein that she included in the package she sent, which I thought would make fun heels and toes, or cuffs and heels, or cuffs and toes, however you like to do that. So Elaine, if you would get in touch with me on Ravelry and send me your address, I will pop this in the mail to you. And once again, congratulations. The next prize drawing in that CAL will be at the beginning of July. and like July 1st. And I thought since it is Canada Day here in Canada on July 1st, I would make the prize for the next round this fabulous Canadiana project bag. This is made by my friend Kim, who is Ginger Snap. It's the Ginger Snap or Ginger Snap That in some cases. I can't remember if her shop, I don't have her card sitting here. Oh, there's a card in there. Her shop is Ginger Snap. That's a little bit about her and the bag. And she's on Etsy as well. She's a friend that she lives here in Calgary, and she does yarn as well. I have some yarn that I'll be giving away a little later in the year from her, and she very generously donated this great bag. I thought this was so much fun with the beavers and all this sort of hockey jerseys and hockey sticks. I thought it feels very Canadian, feels very appropriate for Canada Day. There's lovely sort of birch wood, I think, fabric lining the inside of the bag. It's a great bag. It's great size for socks or any other small projects. You could actually, I think, fit 2 skeins of yarn in there, so it could even be for a small 2 skein project. And her bags are super well made. I have a couple of them myself. She's also included there's a stitch marker, progress keeper or zipper pull, whatever you prefer, but it can be detached and used as a progress keeper, and it's a maple leaf, again very Canadian. And I'm going to throw in with the project bag some really great snagless stitch markers. I picked a bunch of these up from Prairie Dye Works. She's also a local to me maker. She does yarn, and she does these really great stitch markers. They've got little stone, I think, does it say on here? Yeah, they're mineral stones, and this is, I can't quite read what that is, but I can't quite read her printing there, but it tells what the stone is on the bottom. They're these really pretty little white mineral stones, and these are great, lightweight. They're the snagless stitch markers, so I'm going to include that. So that'll be the prize for the beginning of July. So if you're working on some pattern socks, get them in the Cal. If you haven't entered anything up till now, you still have lots of chances to win this prize, and then there'll be another prize draw at the beginning of September. So yeah, come and play along. And as I said, check out everybody else's projects in there. They're really inspiring. So that is that. Now let's, I'm going to just dive right into what I've been working on. I've been fairly busy since I spoke with you last. And a lot of my time has been taken up to a large degree with sweater knitting. As I've talked about earlier, I've been pretty obsessive on the sweater knitting this year. It's sort of my goal for this year is to make some more sweaters and cardigans and stuff for myself. And I've been chugging away at that goal. So my first work in progress is, oops, I lose the yarn there, is my Birkin sweater, which is coming along, as you will see. The yoke is all done. The body is about 2/3 of the way done, and I stopped on the body and I started knitting on a sleeve because I had a little worried about how much yarn I had left to complete the rest of the body and both the sleeves in this beautiful gray. The yarn I'm using, by the way, is Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, the fingering weight. This color is Sweatshirt, the gray. I don't remember all the colors I used in the yoke now, but it is in my, it'll be on my project. It's on my project page for this. I was going to say it's in the show notes, but you may have noticed if you went to look that I've been notoriously bad at doing show notes lately. I'm going to try and do some for these. I sort of forget to do it when I post the episode up to YouTube, and then it's usually a day or two later when I remember it, and then, you know, life gets in the way. But anyway, but you can always contact me on Ravelry if you do have actual questions about stuff. If I haven't posted show notes and you want to know something specific. And I try to get my stuff up on my project page on Ravelry as well. I'm auntiejo on Ravelry. And yeah, so it lists all the different colors. But so I'm into the ribbing. The Birkin has 3/4 length sleeves, so I'm into the ribbing close to the end of this first sleeve. And as I said, because I wasn't exactly sure how much yarn I had, and I didn't want to run short, so I thought I'd complete the sleeves first, and I think that leaves me 2 more skeins of yarn to complete the body. Maybe 3, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I'll have enough. I did actually pick up 1 more skein. They're 50-gram skeins of the shelter, so I did actually pick up 1 more. So this is coming along. I'm not working on this quite so fast right now because it is definitely a winter sweater. You know, the part of the body that has the color work is pretty thick because of the floats and stuff up there, and it is definitely going to end up not being a sweater that I will be able to wear until the fall, so I don't feel any sort of burning need to finish it ASAP, but I'd like to get it finished in the next month or so. And yeah, I'm enjoying working on it. I'm really enjoying the yarn, the Brooklyn Tweed. There's a few things that I'm not wild about, and we'll see how that all comes out in blocking, and I'll talk more about overall the whole sweater and the construction and the design and stuff when I have completed it. But suffice to say, for now, it's coming along, and it's an enjoyable knit, particularly because of the yarn. So actually, all the projects I'm working on right now, I'm really loving the yarn. So, and this is living in a Fat Squirrel sweater size bag. I have a couple of these, and I love them so much. This is my library cards bag. It looks a tiny bit the worse for wear because I spilled, as you'll see on the bottom there, I spilled something on it a while back, and it had to go, I don't remember what it was I spilled, but it had to go in the washing machine, and so it doesn't look as sort of nice and neat and new, but that doesn't matter. I love it anyway. It's a great bag, and it does the trick. So I've been working on that, and then I have another sweater that I've been working on. I showed you the start of this. This is also in a fantastic Fat Squirrel sweater size project bag. This is how nice they look when they haven't been through the wash because I've spilled something on them. And this is the Weekender sweater by Andrea Mowry, and I think I showed you this when I had just done the bottom sweater band and a little tiny bit of the body. I had maybe that much, I think. I've done a lot more of the body. I'm into my 3rd ball of yarn now. I'm that far into the body. It's hard to show you this because this is a sort of oversized, boxy sort of sweater, so there's a lot of sweater on these needles. I'm actually using, I can't remember what the name of these are. These are a Knit Pro, or a Knit Pro, is that the maker? These are an acrylic needle, an interchangeable set, and they're not everybody's cup of tea, but I like them. I actually enjoy needles having a little stickiness and grab to them. I'm not as big a fan of metal needles. It's just personal preference. But anyway, so that's what I'm using on this. This is a really fun sweater. Again, this is definitely not well, I suppose it could be a spring and fall sweater for cool evenings. This is going to be a sort of throw over a lighter shirt or t-shirt or whatever type of sweater for sure. It's going to be very warm. It's quite thick. It's knitted in worsted weight. The yarn that I'm using for this is Beaver Slide Dry Goods, 2-ply worsted merino. I love this yarn. I talked about this before. I love this yarn. I really enjoy knitting with this yarn. It is a lovely rustic, I think it's woolen spun. It's light and airy anyway. It's mule spun, which is a way of spinning. It's on a mule spinner, which is a piece of equipment. And it's actually spun. It's from Beaver Slide Dry Goods. Their physical shop is located in Montana. But the yarn is actually sent, and I believe a lot of the fleece comes from their own farm, but it's sent up to a mill here in Canada, quite close to, about an hour's drive from where I live, actually owned by the family of a dear friend of mine, somebody I've known for many, many years, my friend Esther. Her family owns the mill, and it's a custom woolen mills, and they have a bunch of, it's an old mill, and they have a bunch of beautiful old sort of antique now milling equipment, including the mule spun gear. So Beaverside Dry Goods sends their fleeces up to be spun here, and then they're sent back down to them in Montana and dyed. And this color is Snowberry, I think. I can't remember if it doesn't say that on the this tag. But I think it's called Snowberry. It's this beautiful, beautiful soft pink with these little speckly pops all through it of like this fantastic sort of watermelony. You can see those little pops like right there. These sort of watermelony, raspberry-ish, well, more kind of watermelon really, I guess. Pops of brighter pink in them. Just enough to give real sort of depth to the yarn. And I just, like I said, I love it. I love working with it. There's some lanolin obviously still in this yarn. It's not a superwash. It's just 100% merino. And as I said, there's definitely some lanolin still in this yarn, and so it feels so nice. It's very soft. It's very airy and fluffy. You get a little tiny feel of the lanolin when you're knitting with it, so it actually sort of moisturizes your hands a little bit, which is fantastic. It smells really good, really lovely, and not heavy sheepy, just this light, lovely sort of fresh, natural woolen smell, which I really like. I mean, there is a little bit of, it's the same with the Brooklyn Tweed actually, both the Brooklyn Tweed and this yarn. There are little bits of veggie matter, little bits of straw and hay and whatnot in it, and every once in a while I have to pick a piece or two of that out because I can feel it as the yarn runs through my fingers. But I don't mind that at all. I'm really loving this. And the Weekender, it's quite a popular pattern. You've probably seen it around. It's knit actually inside out. So it's knit in the round, and I'm working on it with knit stitches. But at the end of the day, the purl side will be the outside. So she has you knit the body inside out so that you're not purling all that stuff you're knitting. And it's got this wonderful, let's see if I can find it on the inside here. I'll flip it to what will be the outside eventually. It's got this slip stitch that runs up the front and the back of the middle of the front and the middle of the back of the sweater. Yeah, and it's super easy. I mean, there's no body increases because it's a boxy shape, so it's just around and around and around. I've got so many stitches on this needle that it doesn't slide super easy. I do have to keep sort of pulling the stitches around, but again, I don't mind that. This is great TV knitting. So knitting on this, knitting on the Birkin, and then both of which are just stockinette in the round. So I also wanted something that was a little less stockinette in the round, that had a little more challenge to it from time to time to work my brain a little bit. And so I cast on a third sweater. So the other sweater that I've been actively working on is a new project since I spoke with you last. And I made quite a bit of progress for it being a new project. I love this. This is, it's in a box bag that I can't remember who I got it from. It was a gift to me, and it's from an Australian maker, but there's no tag in it, and I can't remember the name of the maker, sadly, but it's a really nice, thick, sort of thick, squishy, really pretty box bag, sort of sweater size box bag. And the sweater that is in it is the Erie cardigan. I dropped the tag, excuse me. It's the Erie cardigan by Isabel Kramer. This is a pattern that's in the 4th edition of Lane magazine. And I gotta say, I love Lane magazine so much. That is like my ` knitting magazine. I have all 4 of the first 4 issues, and the 5th is coming out soon, and I've actually put a sort of reservation in at my local yarn store, one of my local yarn stores, Stash, because they carry that sweater or that magazine, and so they have my name on a list now, and they will call me when it comes in, and I'm really excited about that because I just find that there are tons of projects in that magazine that I want to make. There are, between the first 4 issues, are probably the Birkin is out of issue number 2, I think, no, 3, I think. So those are, I've already got 2 sweaters on the needles that are from those books, and they're more of a book really than a magazine. They're magazine format, but the quality of it is more like a book. and the price of it is more like a book, but they're well worth it. They're between the first 4 editions. I think there's probably 8 or 10 sweaters that I definitely want to knit, that I definitely, if I have the yarn for them, those will go on my needles. There's so many really lovely patterns. Great variety of different kinds of patterns, great variety of designers, all kinds, but lots of stuff in there. There's a pair or 2 of socks in there that I would like to knit. There's a hat that I'm definitely going to make for my husband. I picked up some yarn for that the other day. So I feel like I'm definitely getting my money's worth on that, because there's lots I'm going to knit out, something I'm going to knit out of every issue for sure, probably more than one thing out of every issue. And it's also super enjoyable reading. There's some great articles in there. There's some recipes. There's all kinds of stuff. So if you haven't checked out Lane Magazine, highly recommend it. 2 thumbs up. It's fantastic. And the ladies that that publish it are great. They are very active on Ravelry. I put a picture up of the start of this Erie sweater, and I tagged them. I tagged Lane Magazine in it, and within, I bet you, 10 minutes, they had reposted back on my Instagram post about how they loved how the start of my sweater was looking. So anyway, here it is, and here's how much I've gotten done. I've already separated for the sleeves. Also really loving working on this. So as you can see, it's patterned in the front. It's a stockinette in the back. It's a raglan construction. But the front has these lovely, this big cable and eyelets patterned down it, and then these little cables, and then these little sort of mock cables, and then a double seed stitch down the rest of the body for the front. And it's got interest and stuff to do, but it is super easy. I find anyway, super easy to do. I don't need to look at the pattern all the time. I need to look a little bit at the pattern for this part, for what row I'm on in this part, and that's it. All the rest of it I can figure out just by looking at where I am. And yeah, so I don't find it that I have to, like, I was able to knit this while watching TV. Like I said, I did have to reference to make sure I was on the right row. And at one point I did mess up a row, and I had to knit back about 5, I had to unknit about 5 rows. I tried to figure out, when I realized, because it was a mistake, it was right, like somewhere right in here. It was fairly obvious, and it would have sat right, the middle of the front of my bust. So it's like, it would have been glaring at least me every time I looked in the mirror, and conceivably other people too. And I couldn't figure out any other way to, I thought about, could I rip back? Could I put in a, lifeline? But because of all these different stitches and cable patterns and stuff, every other way I could think of correcting it felt complicated and kind of risky. So I actually spent an evening and unknit a bunch of rows till I got back to where I was, corrected my mistake. But anyway, it's coming along really nicely. I really love it. And the yarn I'm using on this, I'm also really digging knitting with. All 3 of these projects are with a more rustic, I guess we'd say, wool. Natural wools. They're wools that are not superwash. This one is Abundant Earth fiber. You can read that. It's Abundant Earth. It's their Joseph and Annie base, which is 90% domestic merino and 10% targi. 360 yards. It's a sport weight, labeled as a sport weight. And Abundant Earth Fiber is a company from Whidbey Island, just off the coast of Seattle, basically, in the Gulf Islands. Just off of Washington State. And they were at the Knit City event that I went to in Vancouver last end of September, and I picked this yarn up there, and it feels so great to knit with. It is a really bouncy fiber. Because it's a sport weight and it's a bit airy, it's going to be a light sweater, but it's going to be, I think, still warm and cozy and comfy. And I haven't tried it on yet. I'm going to knit another few rows into the body and then put it on some waist yarn and try it on, but I don't have any concerns there. So really loving this. So I've been I sort of alternated between all three of these sweaters over the last 3 weeks. And as you can see, I put some significant time into all three. So I'm hoping that I will have a couple of new sweaters by the middle of the summer that I can't wear for a couple of months. But anyway, but I did also, so I was exclusively for about the last 2.5 weeks sweater knitting like crazy. And as I've talked about before, my sock knitting mojo had gone a little sideways, and which is funny because that, you know, sock knitting has always been a big part of my journey as a knitter. It's what really roped me into knitting to begin with, and it's sort of my first love. And there are a lot of years where I knit 20, 25 pairs of socks in a year, and this year I was so focused on sweaters since the new year that I think I had completed up till now, it's the beginning of May, 1 pair of socks in all of 2018, which is very unusual for me. I had a few others on the go, but plus here I am running this pattern knitting Cal, and everyone else is popping out all kinds of beautiful pattern socks, and I'm doing squat. So I thought, well, I gotta get back to you. I had a pair of socks that I've shown numerous times on this podcast that I cast on. Well, embarrassingly, these were my Christmas Eve cast on this year. And I got 1 sock finished, and then the second sock was about that far from the cuff into the leg. Had about that much of it done, and it was just sitting and sitting and sitting, and I hadn't worked on it in ages, and I was like, I'm going to finish those socks. So I pulled them out, and I actually pulled out a couple of sock patterns that I had left languishing, and I put them all and a few other sock related things into this bag, which I love. This is my oh, now I'm gonna forget the name, damn. Jenna Rose. This is my Jenna Rose bucket bag. She's a Canadian fabric design. She designs and prints these fabrics, and she makes all kinds of fantastic bags. I love this bag. So it's just a bucket bag. It doesn't have a closure, but it sits on the arm of the sofa. And it had a bunch of junk in it, knitting junk. I shouldn't say junk, but it had a bunch of like leftover skeins of yarn and bits and pieces of other things. And I cleaned it out the other day, and I put all of my sort of work in progress type things, sock related, into this bucket bag, and so they're sitting there right beside me as a reminder to occasionally work on socks. And I finished in a day. I finished finally my Irving socks. Like I said, they were my Christmas Eve cast on. Here they are in all their glory. 2 finished socks. Ends are even woven in. Now they just need their little bath, and they're ready to go in the sock drawer. And I really love them, and I really actually enjoyed working on these a lot. I don't know why I got so stalled off. Well, I do. I got stalled because I fell into the sweater knitting hole. But anyway, there's this groovy pattern down the groovy. Can you believe I just said groovy? There's this great pattern down the front. These socks are designed by Jacqueline Salem of the Brooklyn Knit Folk podcast. This was her second design, I think, after the Clark socks, which I also knit last year. And they're these really pretty, I think she sort of calls it, and I think she's right, sort of an Art Deco inspired design. There's these cables, sort of horseshoe cables down the side. There's some pearl texture on the back of the leg. It's a slip stitch heel, not my favorite, but I did it according to the pattern because I really wanted to follow her pattern. If I did it again, I think I would do a heel flap and gusset, or I would do maybe a fish lips kiss heel. I don't really enjoy, oh, and I'm just seeing, I don't know if you can see that, but I made a mistake here. I think I missed a slip stitch or a rapid turn. Anyway, not that it's not a hole, so it's all good. Yeah, anyway, and I did a contrasting heel and toe, not cuff. The yarn I used for these, the body of the socks was knit out of Earl Grey Fibers, Fiber Co. Shown it before, Earl Grey Fiber Co. She's a California dyer in the colorway Dickens, in a 2-ply 75-25 merino nylon. This was gifted to me by the Love Ladies of the Cloud Society podcast. Love this yarn. Love this color. You can see it pretty good here that it's actually this very soft sage green gray. It's actually a very, very pale soft gray. Or green, sorry. It's a pale soft green. It looks a bit more gray in certain lights, and it's got tiny little speckles of gray to black and tiny little sort of speckles of teal in there in spots. Super, super pretty. Not a color of socks that I already have in my drawer, which is great. It's a Seawall Fibers mini that I used that I picked up also in Vancouver last year. Just in a sort of dark bluey gray for the toe and heel. And yeah, these were actually very fun to knit. It's a great pattern. Again, the whole thing I think is a six or eight, I can't remember which, but I think 6-row repeat. Really easy to follow without having to be glued to the chart. Like I was able to knit after two or three rows in, or probably 2 repeats in, and then I was able to knit all the rest without, with barely looking at the instructions, because I could just remember what to do and I could see where I was on every round very, very easily. So it was not a complicated knit to make such a beautiful pattern. So yeah, it's gonna look like when it's a little more stretched out on the legs. So yeah, that's the Irving socks. Highly recommend those. Really enjoyed them. So happy I finally finished them. And then I pulled out a next pair of socks that I'd had on the needles since early in January, I think, which are a Helen Stewart pattern, the Vintage Fairy Lights. This is a pattern that's been out for a couple of years. And I had cast these on. I haven't finished both. Don't get too excited. I haven't finished both socks. I've only finished one. But I have one finished. And I was only, when I picked them up day before yesterday, I hadn't turned the heel yet. So in the last about 36 hours, I turned the heel and finished all the foot. Not that that was hard, but there's a really pretty pattern. It's got these lovely sort of dangling fairy lights design at the top, and then the rest of the leg and the front of the foot is a 3x1 rib, so easy and enjoyable to knit. Heel flap and gusset. Beautiful yarn. This is Woolen Boon. What is her? Woolen Boon Classic is her the sock base, which is also a, what is it? Oh, it's 100% merino. There's no nylon in it. That explains why it feels so lovely. A lot of people don't like to use 100% wool with no nylon for socks because they don't wear as well. I don't worry about that because, especially if they're socks for me, I have about 85 pairs of socks. So none of my socks get worn often enough, even if I only, wear a pair of socks once a month, they don't get holes too fast, and I'm not super hard on them, and so they're going to last me, even 100% wool without nylon. They're going to last me a couple of years at least. So, but I know if you are hard on socks, or if you have less pairs of socks and you're wearing them in a much more regular rotation, you might want to stick with socks that have nylon, or a little bit of silk content can replace nylon for sturdiness. Mohair sometimes, but you might want something more than 100% merino. But for me, I don't worry about that. But anyway, so it's Woolen Boon. It's her Boon Classic yarn, and the color, as you can see, is Robin Sparkles. And it's so pretty. I'll show you on the bottom of the foot. So it's this lovely, delicate, soft, pale blue, sort of variegated blue and cream. And then there are these pops, little tiny, delicate pops and sprinkles that are bright. See, they're bright orangey red and bright yellow and dark blue and green, a bit of green. Really, I love it. Love it. Really pretty. So I finished the first one of those. Have yet to cast on the second, but I will. And by the time I had finished this sock, all of a sudden, bam, my love of socks was back. It was like, why did you forsake us? You love us. And so I am back to wanting to intersperse my sweater knitting with sock knitting, at least for the time being. So the other things that I put into this basket, knitting bag, besides the yarn to do my other sock for the vintage fairy lights, was the next couple of sock projects that I'm going to work on. And I've actually picked the yarn, put the needles in here, printed out the patterns, and am all committed to the next few pairs of socks to keep me going. So I've cast on another one. I just have this little start. I did most of this morning, actually. This is the Winter Rose Socks by Helen Stewart. It's the first of the patterns from her sock pattern club that she's running this year. There've already been 2 patterns out and a 3rd one coming soon, so I'm way far behind because I'm just casting on the first one. But I've also picked up yarn for the 2nd one, so that's going to be on the needle sometime soon too. So this is the Winter Rose Socks. Not really much to see here yet except the cuff, but it's pretty. The yarn I'm using, this is a skein yarn. This is a deep stash ball of yarn from Skein Yarn Company in Australia. This is she doesn't carry this base anymore. It's a BFL base. I think it's 100% BFL. I don't think there's nylon in it, but I can't remember. And I don't have the tag. I lost the tag for this a while back. She has a new BFL base that's not this one, I think, in a sock weight, I think. But this is a really pretty sort of mauvey, beigey, pinky color. Just kind of a very pale mauve. Never remember how people say it. Anyway, it's very pretty and delicate. This base is a bit thinner than a lot of sock yarn. It's gonna make the socks a little smaller. I usually knit the medium size, but I will probably knit these to fit either my mom or my sister, who both have smaller feet than me and slimmer calves than me, and put it away in a gift box for gift bag of presents for next Christmas, I think. Anyway, so I started those, and I wound yarn for the next pair of socks in the Helen Stewart sock club is, I think, called Magnolia Socks, also pattern. And I wound up this beautiful yarn is going to be those socks. This is Riverside Studio, another Canadian yarn dyer out of Quebec. And this color is Meadow. You can see why. And it's, what is this? A little bit slimmer, thinner on yardage. So I'm guessing this is close to a sport weight because it's, well, it's only 3.5 ounces anyway. 383 yards, which will still be lots for me to get a pair of socks out of. And it's an 80-20, I think. Yeah. So I wound those, and I've got needles for those, and I've got the pattern printed out, not in here, but, and then the last ones, which I might actually cast on this afternoon, another skein of Wool and Boon, and I'm going to do another pair of Clark socks by Jacqueline Salem. She's running a Cal with her group right now, and I knit a pair of those last year, and I really enjoyed them, so I think I will knit another pair of them for that Cal, which I believe runs till the end of July, so I've got lots of time. Or maybe mid-July. But anyway, mid-July? Yeah. But anyway, plenty enough time if I cast these on fairly soon. This is another skein of, as I said, of Wool and Boon Classic, and this color is Accidentally in Love, it's called. This is a beautiful, it looks a little greener in the light here than it's actually sort of a goldy green, but closer to a gold color, and then it's got pops of red and green in it. It's very pretty, very pretty. So yeah, so I'm pleased that I'm sort of back into the world of sock knitting, and in fact, being back to the world of sock knitting is really, and it may be just part of the mental state I'm in right now, because I started thinking about another shawl too. I haven't knitted a shawl, in a while. I think probably at least 6 months, maybe more like 7 or 8 months. I can't even remember when I think the last shawl I worked on was definitely before Christmas. And I just can't remember how long before Christmas it was. sure I showed it in the podcast, but it's been, oh, I think maybe it was the worsted weight shawl that I did. Probably. So long ago, can't even remember the name of it. So I think the last shawl I knit was probably about 8 months ago. And I enjoy shawls, but I don't knit them I don't feel a lot of burning desire to knit them these days because I have a lot of them from past knitting projects. And I have a few that I wear, and I think maybe I will, another podcast or two down the line, maybe I will talk a bit about some of the shawls that I've knit in the past and the ones that I, the ones that I wear and the ones that I don't and why. And that would be kind of interesting. But anyway, every once in a while, of course, I get struck by, and I have a better sense, I think now, of what I do like in a shawl and what I am more likely to wear. And one of the things I've always really enjoyed is Stephen West shawl patterns, or some of his shawl patterns anyway. I like the size of some of his, the Vertices Unite that I knit a while back, about a year and a half ago. I wore all winter, practically every day all winter, this past winter. I love that one. I love the size of it and the shape. I tend to like shawls that are longer than deep. I'm not a big triangle shawl wearer. I tend to wear them wrapped around my neck a lot. And yeah, I just sort of, and I like ones that combine a couple of, different colors and different skeins of yarn and stuff. So I started browsing through some of his other patterns that I really like. And I'm thinking about maybe a Garter Goodness shawl, which I actually have the pattern in one of my Lane magazines. Or the other one that I like, and I bought the pattern a while back, is speckled dotted rays, or whatever it is, which is also a large sort of crescent shaped shawl. So I'm thinking seriously about one of those. I was sort of mulling it over in my mind last night going to sleep, and funny enough dreamed about Stephen West in my sleep last night, that he and I were together volunteer ushering, handing out programs at a show. How weird is that? Anyway, but I think that's because I had been looking at some patterns and thinking about some of those shawls. So maybe partially what it is I'm just right now I'm in a place of like, I want to cast on all the things and knit all the things. And, but I won't cast that shawl on right away because I definitely want to I don't want to lose momentum on these sweaters. So, and it's going to get a little harder as the weather gets warmer. So I want to kind of stick with them, and I want to see some progress, and I want to get at least one of those 3 off the needles fairly shortly here. Maybe even 2 of them would be great. So anyway, that is everything that I think I have to talk to you about this week. As I said, I hope that you'll participate in the sock knitting, Cal, if you haven't up till now. There are lots of easy patterned socks, things like Hermione's Everyday Socks, which are a simple pattern to knit. And, if you're not an super experienced knitter, not super experienced with lace or cables or whatever, there are easy ones. And they are fun to knit. And I do find that pattern socks can go faster because you sort of want to get through the next part of the pattern and all that. Anyway, so yeah, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to come join in on that. And as I said, congratulations, Elena, on winning that prize. And do get in touch with me and send me your address so that I can get that in the mail to you. And that is all, like I said, that I have to say to you until I record next time. Happy knitting.